What? No, then base on the base? No.
No. Base on the bottom.
Yes, I'm starting from the Mishnah. Yes, so we're going to go again from the Mishnah. Okay, let's start again the Mishnah. Okay, Mikabelis. Here we go. Mikabelis isha miyad beno miyad balo. A woman can receive the lulav from the hand of her son and the hand of her husband after he used it. And here's a huge chiddush, umachziron lamayim b'Shabbos. And she's allowed to put it back in the water on the Shabbos. So why would you think that the woman would not be allowed to take it from the hands of her husband and the hands of her son? So the answer is because we might have thought that there was a problem of muksa. Because midioraisa, a woman is not mechuyev in lulav, because it's a mitzvah saseh shel zman grama, a positive command. A positive command that women are, it's time bound, so women are not mechuyev, right? So therefore we'd have a problem of muksa, which is the rabbanon. The old concept of muksa is the rabbanon, meaning if it's not prepared for Shabbos and you don't need it, it's muksa to you. So therefore I might have thought you would not be allowed to handle it. And of course we're talking about at the time of the Beis Hamikdash, when we did take the lulav and esrog on this first day of Yom Tov, when it fell out on Shabbos, right? We say there's no muksa, even though she's not mechuyev in the mitzvah.
There's no such a thing that something is muksa for you, but not for me.
Well,
we did just a muksa for everybody.
Right. So that's what we're coming to. We're coming to the idea, as the Gemara is sort of going to talk about it, all or nothing. We try not to split the baby when we come to gezeres. That it's a gezerah by one person, but not by another person, which is a much larger conversation, which if we have time, we should talk about it, about today's world where many people put on chumras, stringencies, and the young people do not know where halacha ends and where chumras begin. And that is, remember what you just said, Daddy. We don't make gezeres for some of the people and not for the others. We're very not like, and today we seem to have blurred that line somewhat, and that is very problematic and may explain somewhat why we're experiencing once again people falling out, young people falling out. So, but that if we have time today, we could talk about it. She's allowed to put it in water. Why in water? Because it's not growing. The water is merely there to keep it not to wither. So it shouldn't wither. So it's part and parcel of the mitzvah. It's like a hechsher mitzvah. It's a helper to the mitzvah.
Why did it say she can put it in water? Why can't he put it in water?
Because we're having the case. He could put it in water. Right. We're saying he could certainly put it in water. Because first we're saying, was she even allowed to hold it?
Yeah.
Was she allowed to hold it? So what we're saying, the chiddush here is that she's allowed to hold it. And not only that, since she doesn't have a mitzvah, there's really no hechsher mitzvah for her. There's no hechsher mitzvah for her. And so we're saying not only on the mitzvah itself, where she has no chiyuv, she's not obligated, but she gets a kiyum mitzvah. She does get a mitzvah for doing it, just out being part of it. But the hechsher mitzvah, she certainly is not involved in. She's allowed to be doing it. Says the Mishnah further, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, for Shabbos, Machzirin, on Shabbos, you're allowed to put, anyone is allowed to put it back in the water, like the Tanakama, B'yontif Musafim. On Yontif, you're even allowed to add new water. U'b'moyed, Chalamoyed, right? Chalamoyed, Machlifin, you're allowed to change the water. Rashi seems to be saying straight out that in fact it is a mitzvah to change the water, because don't stay with the old stanky water. Very interesting that.
Thank you.
Right? Cotton. Hi. Now I can see you, Jerry. Great. Cotton ayudeo lenana, a miner who knows how to wave the lulav, chayiv bilulav, is thereby chayiv, is obligated in lulav because of the din of chinuch, of education. Comes Rab Moshe and says this in very...
Hello. I don't want to bother you.
In very strong language. He says, if a boy
The trap.
is
And tomorrow, remember, we're going there.
old enough
Whenever
to
we want to leave, we'll go before.
metric,
We have the stroller, we
you
have the
have
car.
to
seat.
buy
That's what we want to give
a
her everything
real
right
lulav,
now. We can
a
even
real
take it
kosher
to the
lulav, and a
chiropractor.
real kosher esrik,
Okay?
not a fake out.
So why
That's
not,
what it says.
why
What-
not, why could you not fill and,
Gemara's going to talk about it. Very good question.
you know, I'm always too far ahead of
Right,
myself.
but the question is great, but exactly right. But the Ramosha says this, that you go ahead and you want to save yourself money. So you get him apostle esrik. What does he know? Right? He says you're being mechanech him with sheker. You are educating him with lies. Because the halacha is that if he's old enough to wave the lulav, he's mechuyev as chinuch. He's obligated in lulav. That means a kosher lulav.
He can use his father's.
He could use his father's, but the point is, get him a kosher one. If you're getting him his own, get him a kosher one.
But can someone who is, I'm sorry, Bonnie. for this
No, go
question.
ahead.
Beneath the age of bar mitzvah, can he have a possession? Can he take his own lulav? No,
Well, if he's not-
Let's very good question.
he's not on mitzvah.
If he's not by mitzvah, so number one, we do say that at some point after the age of 9, there is certain amount of possession you can't steal from a child. Okay. Okay. Number 2, even if you want to say he cannot take lochem for himself, that's not the issue here. The issue here is chinuch, education. You cannot educate him with a lie. That's what Ramesh is saying. And so Ramesh comes and asks a major question. There's a famous Gemara that says, a father says, whichever son will race to Yerushalayim and get there first, he's the one that I'm going to count in my Karban Pesach. Now, of course, he's counting all his kids in the Karban Pesach. Right? All his kids are in the Karban Pesach. So it doesn't matter who gets there first, who gets there last. So he says, the Gemara says, Kedei Lazaris b'mitzvahs. In order to teach it to be mazrizus, go quickly to do mitzvahs. Fake Ramosha, it's a lie. How can you be mechanech a child with a lie?
It's a white lie.
Ramosha ends up with a tzarech in Gadol. He doesn't have an answer.
It's
He
not a
asked
lie.
the question in the Dibris Moshe, Daf Chav Hey in Gittin, in the Sechtes Gittin, with that one of the places with that Gemara.
He's a hair. Be careful what
He
you're
said-
saying to your child.
He's saying, he brings out this Gemara here. He says, what are you talking about? You're not going to buy an illegal lulav or a possible esrik for a child. Then you're not giving Mekayim the mitzvah of chinuch. So how could you be mechanech? What's shot in this Gemara?
Well, you just said he can have possession at that
But
age.
even if he can't have possession, you cannot give him a lulav, that's possible. You can't give him an esrik, that's possible. Can't happen. Says Ramosha. No,
Yeah,
sir.
but there, the kids knew that they didn't.
So the Gemara doesn't say that. In fact, the Gemara goes over there from Mikan Yesh Breira, and the Amar Rabbi Yochanan. It's not about a question of Breira. Kedei Lazarus b'mitzvahs.
You're saying the kids know it starts to.
One second. That's the kids really don't know because they don't know what a kosher esrik is. Not.
Probably said it with a schmeichel.
I'm telling you, Rabbi, if I show you the Shiloh, Rabbi, and the question is,
Is this
Well-
halacha l'maisa?
yes, it is halacha l'maisa.
So let me ask you something. On the Lower East Side, Erev Yontif, okay, they are literally selling. That's when the mommies and daddies go to buy the puzzle esriks. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so it's halacha l'maisa right in town, in front of Tverit. You know,
The Tveres Yerushalayim, they're not doing it correctly. Yes, and I can show it to you inside. You have to buy it. And Daddy, that Gemara is not so much. It turns out there's a whole brisker thing on it, and there's a whole thing around Moshe. I'll give it to you.
But today you could buy it in the street for $5.
That's what he was saying. Now, the day before Yom Tov, you can even buy a kosher esrog for $5. And that happens to be, everybody, that my father's a big talker, because when he bought me my lulav and esrog when I was a kid, he always bought me a kosher lulav and esrog. He always bought me a kosher lulav and esrog.
you mean he told you that? That's what it was.
No, he didn't tell me, because my father's incapable of lying. So there you go. So there you go. But there we go. And now it's recorded. By the way, Matthew started uploading it onto YouTube again. So Daddy, you're becoming famous again. So says the Gemara. So here comes the Gemara sheet. It's obvious that a woman is allowed to accept a lulav from her husband and her son. Why should you think otherwise? Mao, the same I might have thought. Oh, you'll be it's a woman is not obligated to take the mitzvah because the mitzvah say shall the man grava able like to kabel. She cannot accept it because of the muksa problem midrabanon. Kamash malon that it's not muksa for her. It's prepared. If it's prepared for her husband, it's prepared for her. The Gemara got now.
Here, Muksa and time bound mitzvah, two arguments.
Two different arguments.
Right.
Time bound mitzvah means she's not mechuyev. But if she's not mechuyev, therefore it's muksa midrabanan. They're making two things. They're saying it's a mitzvah says it's magrama. She's not mechuyev. Everybody agrees. But by doing that, you've created a muksa problem. Says the Gemara, you have no A equals B, therefore C. Exactly. A young cotton who knows how to wave the lulav is obligated in the mitzvah of lulav because of the mitzvah of education of chinuch. Tanu Rabbanon, cotton chayav b'lulav. Cotton that knows how to shake is chayav b'lulav. And Amar Rabab, it says Rabab. You see, you made it right into the Gemara. Okay, if he knows how to wrap himself in its tzitzis, he's mechuyev in tzitzis. Now, the real mitzvah in tzitzis says, is with a talis godol, a regular talis shawl that we wrap around the heads like the Arabs do. Okay, by the way, when you wrap, so you put it over your head, you have to leave your eyes open like a burqa. You have to leave. You don't put it all the way over. You put it down to your forehead. And when you wrap the lower part. So it's as if you're in the desert in a sandstorm, right? But your eyes are still opening. That's how the wrapping is. Like the Taliban. Exactly. Okay? So that's called wrapping. Okay? Lishmar tefillin. Yeah. Right, oh, Mr. Black.
He said, this is in the Taliban.
Right. So here we go. He said Lishmar tefillin, if he knows how to guard the sanctity of tefillin, Aviv loikeach loy tefillin, a father buys to him tefillin. Yodeya ledaber, Aviv londe Torah krishma. If he knows how to talk, his father starts teaching him Torah and krishma.
So he can lay tefillin without tali kadol.
Actually, you buy it just close to the public.
But now we're going to get, as I say, let's learn the Gemara. But right at this point, we have a Tosefta that says if he knows how to shake a lulav, get him a lulav. If he knows how to put on tzitzis, he knows how to watch them, he won't rip them, won't treat them inappropriate, get him tzitzis. If he knows how to watch tefillin, get him tefillin. And if he knows how to talk already, that means really young, 3-4 years old, start teaching him Torah and Kriya Shema. So the Gemara says, Torah Mahi, where do we start? Amar Rebbe Mahuna, and now you know why it's included in Maidani. Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe Mayrasha Kiles Yaakov. You should teach him this verse, which would take us to 42:4. The Torah that Moshe commanded us is the heritage of the congregation of Jacob. Why this pasuk? To ingrain that Torah is not simply there, it's a heritage. Mayrasha Kiles Yaakov, you have to work it. If you don't, if you just get it, if you just look at it as a straight you look at it as straight Yerusha. It doesn't say, it says Mayrasha, not Yerusha, right? If it's just an inheritance and you don't have to work it, it's going to disappear in a generation or two. That's what happens.
That's why when somebody goes off the derech,
Right?
it's like he's snipping the link of a chain.
Of a chain.
So that everything falls out.
But the beauty is that when you snip the chain, you could always solder it back together. And that's the point.
And often it's done.
And very often it's done. And sometimes it takes a generation or two, but it doesn't matter. The bottom line is, and the beauty, and it needs to be said, it's not maybe what Rabbi Shapiro had in mind, right? The Rameir Shapiro had in mind when he started the idea of the Daf Yomi. But in truth, with the advent Then it was to unify clients so that everybody should be learning the same daf. But what it has done in the last 25 years since the advent of Art Scroll, and later on the rewriting of Steinsaltz Shas, the new version, has brought it down to other people, to people who would never have sat down and learned Torah and all that, and Tova Alecha Bracha for Art Scroll and for Rav Steinsaltz, because their chiluk in Olam Haba is going to be enormous because they have brought back the glory of Torah to Judaism. Kriyas Shema Mahi, what is the meant by the recital of Shema? Pasuk Rishon, hear, O Israel, Hashem is your God, the Lord is one. And what is being, of course, the idea is the oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Hashem is Ein Zergot, and that is really, that is the line of the Klai. So if we're defined by something, Hayedei Lishmai Gufay, if he knows how to guard his body from contracting Tumah, means he's old enough already to know to keep his body away from Tumah. We are not talking about his hands. We'll talk about his hands in a minute. He's allowed to eat food that's specifically separated.
We are allowed to eat.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. We are allowed to eat, not he. We are allowed to eat.
For sure.
That means food that's in a separate section in the market that says this is purely Tahira food. We know, even though he took it, he's the one who put it into the refrigerator, we could assume that it's Torah. Why? Because Midi Araisa, Mina Torah, everyone is born Becheskas Tahira. Everybody comes into the world holy. That means the Chazaka de Mikara, the first Chazaka Kama, the very first Chazaka is what? Tahar. It's only in the Rabbanim we're worried. But if he knows how to watch his body, he reverts back to his original Chazaka, his original assumption that he's Tar. That's regarding his body. But hands are different. As we know, hands move everywhere and touch everywhere. Midi Raisa. Biblically speaking, there is no separating hands from the body. If you say he knows how to watch the body, he knows how to watch the whole body. The Rabbanim made something special called Tumas Yadayim, the tumah of the hand. The reason why we're always washing our hands. The Tumas Yadayim. Hands.
Never heard the expression
Tumas Yadayim. So this is a major expression. Tumas Yadayim Midrabanan. The tumah of the hands is only rabbinical in nature because there's no such thing as one. There's no such thing as one limb being tomei and not your whole body being tomei.
Otherwise, we would have to wash the whole body before
Right,
we eat.
exactly. So midrabanan, they made something that only your hands become tomei because we don't know where your hands are going. And you got to do Natilas Yadayim all day long. Right? That's why we wash our hands before we eat. That's why we wash our hands before we daven. All this stuff, when we get up in the morning, we wash our hands.
It's a bit late for the plague. Almost half
The black plague. The black plague.
The Jews, it didn't happen so much.
Because we bathe.
Because Jews are always washing hands. It's part of our culture.
Right. We were clean and we were separated in the.
And that's the reason.
ghetto.
That's the reason why they
Thought we were
Goyim
poisoning the wells.
saying
And the
no,
Goyim
the Jews are doing it because it's not happening to them.
Well, the Black Death didn't kill us, but the Goyim did.
This happened once in an airplane. The food was that they were giving was
Contaminated.
Yeah, it was contaminated, and everybody got sick except the Pumayim, because the
You
Pumayim
don't eat the food.
right. So people said, they were
The
like,
Jew did
yeah,
it.
no, they didn't say the Jews did it. They understood. See,
Kosher.
kosher. That's
Right.
When I was at McGill, one second. When I was at McGill in Montreal, that's where I went to school, and my roommate, I was very fond of him. He was a non-Jew French-speaking non-Jew from New Hampshire.
Right.
And one day he turns to me and says, "Why did you guys poison the wells?" And I said, "You still believe that?" This is
The
1,000 years
Catholics, yeah.
later. I said, they believe it. They
They
still
believe
believe it.
in the protocol of the elder of Zion.
Well, I didn't ask him that, but he actually.
Listen, do you know that I, who am a little slightly younger than everybody in the room, just slightly younger, was, I forgot where I was vacationing. Somewhere out in the boondocks of America, which I like to do, and met somebody who very asked, said, "Oh, you wearing a yarmulke, Jewish? Are you guys wear the yarmulke so you hide the horns?"
Right, they believe
Yeah.
in that.
And I said to him, I said, "There are no horns." I said, "They say hood because you guys translate the word Karen are the horns of light that came out of the R." Yeah, exactly. So let's cause us now. Oh, yeah, now it's trouble. Anyways, let's keep going over here. So now, what about the hands? Oichlin al yodov tahiris, lishmares yodov. But if he knows how to guard his hands, then we'll even be able to oichlin al yodov tahiris. We can eat tahiris from that came in contact with his hands. Now, just to make a point here, because of this hand situation, that's why Rabbi Reisman, Reisman said that since Mashiach is coming any moment, we should all invest in plastics, because when Mashiach comes, we're all going to be wearing plastic gloves, because you can't shake the other guy's hand, because you don't know whether he's tumah or not. And plastic is not makabel tumah. So everything is going to become, you can throw out your china already, you can throw out all your things, everything's going plastic. And yeah, that's what he said, go buy stock. Okay, my father's horrified. The Hungarian in my father is horrified. I already go. Hayedeo lishoel. If a child is intelligent enough to be questioned whether or not he contracted tumah, he's already old enough to know about tumah and to know what's going on. Now comes like this. We have a rule, just before we learn this Gemara. If something is a suffix, I don't know. There's an uncertainty whether something is tar or tomei, whether it's pure or contaminated. The rule is, if it's in a reshus hayochid, it's assumed to be tomei. If it's in a reshus harabim, in a public thoroughfare, it's assumed to be tar.
But what are you referring to? An object, or what?
No, let's say you find an object, a ball, and you're not sure it's tomei. If it's in a private property, it's uncertainty, it's tomei. Obviously, there's a dead animal.
The question is, did the child
No,
touch it? Do you have the child? Do you touch it?
Oh, I see.
If
That's
he
in
says,
this
I don't
case.
know, right.
Right.
If it's in the sure.
If it's in Shach Yachid, so the first rule is suffix tomei b'reshus yachid is tomei. Suffix tomei b'reshus harabim is tar. This is halacha l'moed shemisinai.
Can you learn that from Saita?
Yeah.
No,
I'm
it
getting
can't
it.
be. Can't be.
Yeah, no.
The ground is tamei.
No. Put that aside. We're
Just
talking,
no, it's tamei.
No,
So everything
no.
touches tamei.
No. So that's only midrabanan. We're talking about b'diraisa. That tomei, that chutzlaritz is only midrabanan. We're talking on tomei d'iraisa. Where do we learn it out from? We learn it out from Saita, the secluded woman. If she secludes with another man in a private place, she gets the label of a sota.
You assume that
The assumption is she's a sota. Now we got to go through it. If she secludes in a public place, so she's sitting in a lounge with another man, so she's not secluded. She's not done as a sota. She's not a sota, and that is either case is an uncertainty as to what was going on, right? So that's where we learn it. That's halacha l'moed shemisinai, that we learned it out from sota. So now, having said this,
you assume that
something happens.
That they committed adultery.
Yeah, but now you have the sota. Again, it's an assumption. It's not knowledge. So here we go.
You're not sure.
So here we go. That's, by the way,
We'd be pretty sure.
as actually in today's world. So this is something that we all know, but it could die to say over because it needs to be passed down to our children and later on our grandchildren and so on and so forth. When you have a meeting and you are meeting with a woman, you leave the freaking door open. And when you get doors with glass in the door. I am not kidding about this. You get doors with, and if you don't have a glass in the door,
We learned this in the corporate world, or be able to have another female in the room with you.
Correct.
what did you say, Daddy? You ever heard what Sherry just
As a
said?
professor, many times I had the
A female student.
female student coming in to my office. Always make sure
The door was
the door
open.
was.
The door was open. Now, this today, especially because of the Me Too movement and all that, it is so people are considered guilty until proven innocent, as opposed to innocent until proven guilty. And it
Like
is
British law, like British law.
like British law, and it has screwed up many a person's life who was completely innocent. And it's so in today you have to, without a question, and I would say frankly, in today's world, given the craziness that is going on with the new generation and all the gender nonsense, that I would not sit in an office period ever without a door open. I would just keep the door open.
Actually,
Let me ask you something. How can you go back? And this is what a lot of these things going on right now. We're talking about halacha now. You can go back 20 years, 30 years and say, by the way, this one raped me 30 years ago.
So the answer is, you can say everything you want. If you can't prove it definitively, it's nothing. So in other words, Bob Dylan, Robert Zimmerman was accused this week that in 1965, he raped a 14-year-old girl.
now,
1960 dates, it went back. They're suing him. They didn't go legally. They're suing him. They discovered, I can make money off Bob Dylan.
but the truth, I was going to say what they did to Cuomo.
What they even did to Cuomo.
It wasn't proven.
In that Torah, it's nothing. Of course, it's nothing.
They had no proof.
You asked me to defend him?
No, that's not the
No, I'm
question.
not defending
It's not the
him.
question, but the point is,
This is
no,
mamish shvichas damim, lashon hara with shvichas damim.
correct.
You're
Did
innocent.
you hear what Jerry said? Truthfully, it's shvichas damim and lashon hara, because lashon hara is shvichas damim.
Yeah.
Because you could destroy a person with innuendo so easily. The Gemara,
That's not innuendo, they're litigants.
the litigant,
The women are litigants.
the litigants. So I'll give you guys.
Not Lashon Hara.
Right. No, it's not. But my point, I know it. But in lashon hara is very broad, actually. But it's rechilus. It's actually false. If it's maybe.
Sure, as a professor, for example.
No, the litigant is not doing rechilus. They're litigating.
Yeah, they're litigating. All of it. They're busy. But I'm saying
Let's say I gave a student
a bad mark.
a bad grade. She might take it on me and say, and so suddenly say, "Oh, I was in his office and he touched me," and it's
That's all it takes.
So even though I could say that I never did it, it's not true.
Doesn't matter.
I would be out.
That's it. That's the way it goes. Let's move on over here because we got about 15 minutes. Okay. So there is in a private domain, the doubt concerning him makes everything tamei. In Rishus Harabim, an uncertainty makes you tar. I'm not sure. We're talking. So a courtyard would be a Rishus HaYachid, right? In Minatayr, there's only two Rishus. Rishus HaYachid, Rishus Harabim, and you know that.
They're like a room that's
So in other words, that's right. So in other words, you're in Century Village, right? The whole Century Village is a now where are you? Where do you live?
Boca Racket Club. I'm renting a condo.
So you're renting in Boca. So the Boca Racket Club, right? Think about it. Is what? Is a private property.
Right.
It's a private property, even though it's huge and all that, and it's got a main road. Bottom line is, it's a private property.
Yeah.
Right. So, for certainly. Right. How you date? So now, so this is again our point. What we were talking about in a private office, if there's an uncertainty, the world is going to judge you to be tamei. If you're in a public place, right, and there's an uncertainty, the world will judge you to be tar. And that rule, the Chazal knew thousands of years ago. Hayedeya lifrois kapov. If a child, a child who's a kohen, knows how to raise his hands, to spread his hands and say the bichas kahanim, right, and he does so publicly, where they're allowed to distribute him truma publicly at the granary. And the idea of this is, what do you call it? By the way, everybody take a look at the Tosfos. If you know how to ask him, right? And he says, I don't know. In a private property, it's Tameh, says Tosfos. If he doesn't know how to answer, his suffix would be tar. In other words, if we're not sure if he became Tameh in a private property, and we can't ask him, the rule is, in fact, that he's tahar. It's only because of his ability to be able to ask, and because he goes back, because she could talk, because the Saita could talk, right? That the child is clean, right? Because in that case, it's only a stam suffix. It's not. It's just like any other suffix, and then you go to chazakas, and now. Right, and since everybody starts off with a cheskas tar, that's where you're stuck. Exactly. Very good. Now the next, what it called, Tosfos goes into this business of the. Just give me a second. If he knows how to spread his hands and give the thing that he's allowed to get, that we're allowed to give him truma directly from the granary, not just what was brought into the house. Because Tosfos says like this: if the rabbim knows that he knows how to, if publicly he blessed the nation. In other words, he gets up and publicly to do birchas kahanim, and therefore you're allowed to give him directly from the granary itself, and not quietly, not modestly, in the house when people can't see, right? Because just like a cotton that doesn't know, right? A cotton that doesn't know how to spread his hands, who's too young yet to get up to do birchas kahanim. But a child that doesn't know how to, you don't feed him publicly from truma in the granaries. You feed him truma privately in the house where nobody else can see it.
If he doesn't know how to do the
Doesn't know how to do it. Exactly. Now the halacha is, even a child that does know how to do birchas kahanim, if he's the only kohen, he does not go up. He's allowed to do it together with the base, what it called, with the bnei chabura. With the bnei chabura, that he's allowed to do. Okay? Anyways, let's keep going. We're up to 42b1. We now turn the page. What? A child? Yeah, a child does go up by the kotel with the group.
Right.
So if a minor knows how to shecht, if a minor knows how to slaughter, then we're allowed to eat from his slaughter. Zak Rashi, top line. Le'uman yodav l'shchita. In other words, we trust that his hand is steady to do the shchita. Even though, of course, he's not an expert in the halachas of shchita. From that comes Tosfos. So that comes from Tosfos. To do it calmly. For who this that I say that his hand is steady and I can rely on his shchita even though he doesn't know the halachos, that's when a gadol, an adult, is Ayman al Gaba Birah and sees Shaloi Shah V'loi Doris, that he doesn't press and he doesn't shake. Kach Pirish Bekunches. That explains Rashi. Mashma, therefore, if the truth is he doesn't really know how to steady his hands to do the shchita, and then he does the slaughter. And even though when he did the slaughter, the adult sees the child from the beginning and the end. That in fact he didn't shake and he didn't press, he did it right. Also, he still can't eat from a shchita because it requires a child that does know normally that hand. We know his hand doesn't shake. And the gadol is agaba. Now, why?
Even if the child does not have knowledge?
Even if he doesn't have the knowledge of the halachas, but he has a steady hand. And the adult is there. But if he does, if he would know the halachos, but his hand yet is not steady, even if he did it correctly, and you were there watching from beginning to end, it was a mashkir tamidi, no good. Now, this needs to be said here, because this
This
turns,
is for Rachmanis on the
and
animal.
it's- yeah, but
I think this would apply to an adult also.
Actually,
Absolutely.
An
right.
old man that
No, he's not allowed to.
and then he
he's
does,
not allowed.
even if he does it right.
That's a clean, quick cut.
Well, that's because, yeah, of course. But I want to say, but I really wanted to get into something else over here. Why is a cotton allowed to shecht when he's not in the mitzvah? The answer is because shechita is not the mitzvah. The mitzvah is that if I want to eat meat, I have to eat meat that's been slaughtered. The mitzvah isn't the slaughter. If somebody goes ahead and slaughters the animal and then nobody eats from its meat, was a mitzvah done? No. You know what this is similar to, everybody? When you build the sukkah. Your kids build for you the sukkah. Right now, they build for you a clubhouse. It's only after sukkah arrives and you go into the sukkah and make a bracha, leishev basukkah. You've now said, oh, it's not a clubhouse, it's a sukkah. Limafreya, chubra, double limafreya. Retroactively, we see that what they made was not a clubhouse, but was a sukkah. But are they allowed to build that sukkah? They most certainly are. Because the walls are only a hechsher mitzvah. Because the ikka mitzvah of sukkah is what? The schach. But the walls themselves are only an accessory to the mitzvah. Right? Shechita is not the mitzvah either. It's only an accessory that if I eat the meat, I have to eat meat that's slaughtered. It then turns out that this that I slaughtered the animal retroactively was an accessory that I was able to go to the restaurant and eat the meat. So it turns out at the time of the slaughter, just like at the time of building the sukkah, it was nothing. It's only afterwards that I see that retroactively.
You purchase kosher meat in a supermarket.
Correct.
It's not yet checked because
It
you
is
haven't,
shechted.
but you haven't eaten it yet.
There is no mitzvah yet. It's only when I
It's
buy the meat and I eat the meat,
Then it becomes what?
then-
Kosher?
not kosher.
I know.
Then it becomes a mitzvah. When does it become a mitzvah?
Oh, that's
When I slaughtered it, did I do any mitzvah yet? You thought of it, think about it. What's the whole reason why you shed? Why do we shed? So you can eat the meat.
well, the technique is for kindness to the animal.
No, that's how you do it. That's how you do it. But why? I'm asking a why. In other words, when I slaughtered this animal, why did I slaughter the animal? Am I allowed to just slaughter an animal? Boom, that's it. I slaughtered the animal and I walked away. I slaughtered the animal beautifully kind. Now nothing happens with this meat. You know what? First of all, I'm over on a lava baltashkas, wasteful. Number two, there's no positive commandment. You know what the positive commandment is? So when you eat meat, you have to eat slaughtered meat. So when I eat the meat, I did a mitzvah of eating slaughtered meat. How was it slaughtered? It turns out the original slaughter was a hechsher mitzvah, was an accessory to my eating. But it doesn't happen simultaneously. When I build the sukkah in Elul, right, that has nothing to do with, that has got nothing to do with the sukkah. It's only when I sit in the sukkah on sukkahs that I look back and say, oh, that this I built was a hechsher mitzvah.
Something else, Kohen or Kohen Gadol, then the mitzvah is a korban plus the eating.
Right, that's a carbon. That's something else. We're not talking about carbon here. We're talking about you going to Winn-Dixie to buy food for Shabbos. I'm talking about chulin.
That's all different.
That's a whole different book. And as you know, there's a Masechta called Masechtas Chulin. There's a Masechtas called Menachos and Zavachim. Those are separate, two separate. Don't got to separate those out. There's slaughtering in order for us to be able to eat, and then there's slaughtering because I'm commanded to do in the base of English. It's a different ballgame. Says the Gemara, right?
Even with a Jew looking about it, it's no good.
Why?
Because he has no, he's not.
Because later on, actually, we say later on, because then it's a hechsher mitzvah. The guy, that's really about whether a guy with a gadol, a Jewish gadol, Ayman al Kabbal, whether he can do it or not. I know it's not, but that's for different reasons. because he'll never become a chuyev. He'll never have a shasa kosher. So then it has a din of a nevela. But that's a different law because he never has a moment that it'll be good. Okay, and that's why we say even if he's megayer, kikot and shenoila dummy, somebody who converts.
It's a negative commandment because you shall not eat an animal or that is injured or where the limb is torn from it. So
right. Those are negatives.
You're fulfilling a negative commandment by eating something that was not that kind of animal.
It's not the way it works. That's the positive. That's a positive.
For you sell, yeah.
Right. Okay, so let's go further. Amar Rav Huna shu gadol omer al kabel. Yochel echel kezayis dogon. If a miner was able to eat an olive's volume of grain, right, the size of a kezayis, machichem oitzoy mimei raglav arba'amis. At that point, you have to separate from him when he goes to the bathroom. You have to separate, as Rashi says. The more you eat, the more stankier is your waist.
What you eat?
What you eat? Well, that's what we say. The more robust, the more robust that you're eating. A child's doesn't smell. No, it doesn't smell because it's passing right through the system. Amar Rav Chisda, v'hu sheyochel echad b'gdei achilas pras, and he has to eat it in the time that a normal person takes to eat, which is somewhere between 3 to 9 minutes to eat a kazayis. How do we know this? Because that has got to do with the achilas matzah on Pesach. That you have to eat the matzah, the kazayis matzah, or the 2 kazayis matzah if you're running the seder, right, within 9 minutes. Amar Rav Chia b'reider Rav Yava, ugadol apa pisheni yochel le'echol b'ktei achilas pras, and a grown person, even if he's incapable of eating within 9 minutes, the size of an olive, it takes him longer. That even him, if it takes longer, you still have to get away from when he goes to the bathroom, because the older you get, the more pungent it gets. If a miner is able to eat a roasted volume of a kazayis, you include him in the minyan of slaughtering the Pesach. Shenema ish lefi achlai, according to what he can eat. Rabbi Yehuda, it's not enough until he's able to discern between what is edible and not edible. Ketzad, if you give him a pebble, he doesn't say, "Oh, you gave me a candy." He throws it away. Other guys, if you give him a nut, he takes it. Says the new next parak 4, chapter 4. Lulav Arava Shiva Shisha B'Shiva. The rites of the Lulav and the Arava are performed in the Beis Hamikdash either for 6 days or 7 days. What are we talking about? If the first day of Yom Tov falls out on Shabbos, then we took the Lulav and Esrog on Shabbos, and therefore you would take the Lulav and Esrog all 7 days. If, however, the Shabbos fell out on day 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right, you would not take the Lulav and Esrog on Shabbos. You only took the Lulav and Esrog on Shabbos in the Beis Hamikdash, only on the first day. But
Beis Hamikdash we do it for 7 days.
But if Shabbos falls out on the first day, you would still take it, because that's v'lakato lechem biyom harishon, on the first day, right? So on the first day, even if Shabbos, it overrides. After that, the Shabbos overrides. So that's why it says over here, depending on when Shabbos falls, 6 or 7. What is the Arava? Arava was that they took huge Aravos, huge Hashanas, like we have, the little, but they had ones that were the size of the Mizbeach itself, 10 amas high, and they would march around the base, the Mishkan in middle of.
I wish you could have seen that.
Right. Now, the question, the Gemara here is going to go in, did they march around, or did they in fact just attach Aravas to the sides of the Mizbeach? We're going to get into the whole thing about this. Okay, but it was unique to Sukkot. Okay, and remember about that, unique to Sukkot, because there's something else that's unique to Sukkot. Hallel v'simcha shemaina, reciting the full Hallel and the mitzvah of rejoicing, v'yisa ach samecha, and you shall surely celebrate, is all 8 days, as opposed to Pesach, when Hallel is full Hallel is only said the first 2 days, and then from the 3rd day on, right after the first day, it only half Hallel. Sukkah v'nisuch hamayim shiva. The mitzvah of Sukkah is for 7 days, right? The mitzvah sukkah is got nothing to do with Shabbos. You go in and you do it. And Nisuch HaMayim, all year long, with the kabbalas, with the sacrifices, you had Nisuch HaYayin, the pouring of the wine. On Sukkot, and an additional thing was added, Nisuch HaMayim, the pouring of the water, which was done on Sukkot. This again was done for 7 days, each day of Sukkot. It was part of the Avodah. HaCholil, the flute, that means musical accompaniment, Chamisha v'Shisha, either 5 or 6 days. In other words, the Simcha Beis HaSheva, the partying on Yom Tov, right on Sukkot, where they partied because of Yisa Ach Sameach, got extra Simcha, obviously could not take place on the first day of Yom Tov, which was real Yom Tov. It doesn't, right? So that left over only 6 other days, right? Sukkot is 7 days, and left over 6 other days. But if Shabbos was one of the days, right? If Shabbos fell out on the first day, so then day 2 to 7 was on the weekday, right? It was from Sunday to Friday. No problem. You get 6 full days of partying. If it happens to be that Shabbos fell out in the middle between Sunday and Friday, so the first day of Yom Tov you couldn't party, and the day that Shabbos falls on, you also can't party with music. So you can only have the music for 5 days. Simple. So says the Gemara, Lul of Shiva K. I said that, Simcha Beis Sheva, the music. So, Lul of Shvi. It was a party. Of course it was a party. And you know it's a party. And it's, no, it is a party. And Daddy, you know full well it was a party because the Chazal went and juggled and stood on their heads and jumped up and down, and we're going to get to it. They're not a Jewish party, Dad. A Simcha party. Okay, Lulav, all right, Daddy. Lulav Shiva Ketzad. The lulav for 7 days. How so? Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag. If the first day of Yom Tov falls out on Shabbos, Shechal Yos B'Shabbos Lulav Shiva, because the first day Yom Rishon overrides the Shabbos. Shakal Yomim Shisha would only be 6. If Shabbos falls out in any of the other days, on that day you didn't take the lulav and Esher. Arava Shiva Ketzad. Arava, how do you get 7? Yom Shavi. When is Hoshana Rabbah? Hoshana Rabbah, the great Hoshana, is on the 7th day. So there, the Shabbos thing is not the first day; is actually the last day of Sukkot. Yom Hashvi Shel Rabbah Shchalias Shabbos. If Hoshana Rabbah fell out on Shabbos, Arava Shiva, because there the mitzvah of Arava would override the Shabbos. Okay. V'shakol hayom in Shisha. But all other days, if Shabbos fall out in the middle, it wouldn't override the Shabbos. You'd only have 6. 42b3. Mitzvahs lulav ketzad. How is the mitzvah of lulav done on Shabbos? If the first day of Sukkot fell out on Shabbos, how was it done in the Beis Hamikdash? Yom Tov Rishon Shechal Yos B'Shabbos. On the first day of Yom Tov falls out on Shabbos. Malichin es luveim laharabayis. The people would bring their lulavs to the Harabayis, the Temple Mount, on Friday, Erev Shabbos. Because we don't want you carrying it on Shabbos. Shema Yavarenu Dalet Amos Rishus Harabah. You might come to carry your lulav for Amos in the Rishus Harabah on Shabbos.
From those coming from outside Jerusalem.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Even in Jerusalem, maybe yes, maybe no. Who knows? They just didn't want it. Remember, it's a gezerah. If I have a gezerah in one place, we try to keep the gezerah everywhere. We have a gezerah Shema Yavarenu. What? No, that's different. No, that's because the Megillah says the rules. That in Shushan you had an extra day of fighting, so you should party a second day. So that was a rule of the Wall Street. It said we try as much as possible not to have loisis to do. Don't have different rules. And we're going to actually get into this. This is where the Gemara is going to bring it down. It's coming up, probably not today because it's already almost 10 after 9, and I just want to get to the end of the summit, okay? Because we're a daf behind. So, Mutzah's lulav ketzad. Right, so Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag Shechal Yos B'Shabbos, the first day of Yom Tov fell on Shabbos. Malichin es luleim b'Harabayis. They would bring their lulav into the Harabayis on Friday. Uveu Machzinim Mekabel Maleim, and the attendants who were in charge of this would take to the lulavim from them. V'Soydin Oisa Agabe Itztaba, and would arrange them on the benches on Shabbos. The following day, there was like stadium benches almost outside to see things that was going on the Harabayis. The elderly people would leave their lulavim in a designated chamber because the next day was such a balagan to get their lulavim on Shabbos, right? They didn't want the poor the old people to get trampled. So in other words, think about Mecca. Mecca Lavdei Abdullah every year, usually when they did the Hajj, there were always a stampede. So because the Chazal is about to change the story. This is how it was originally, and then they realized this problem of stampeding. So but they realized right away that the older people, you got to give them their own separate chamber to put their lulavim. Can't be in a public place. And the Bezdin taught the people to say, Kol whoever whose hand will end up picking up my lulav, right? I'm giving it to him as a gift. Since they just put out all the lulavim, whichever lulav you picked up is a gift. So therefore, they can show that nobody will have a problem of the lochem problem. Lomacha on Shabbos, mashkim and ubayin. The people got up, they arose and came to the shul. They came to the base of Mikdash. When it says they got up mashkimim, that means they got up first thing in the morning. Right? And the attendants would pick up the lulavim and start throwing them at people, and they would everybody chop from out of the air. No, it doesn't say that. No. Read the words. They threw it towards them, right? Because look at the next words. They would grab the lulavs and strike one another in their eagerness to retrieve the lulavim. When Bezin saw that this would come to a stampede, when we're going to talk about this. The skin, and this is also talking as striking, that's the truth. They instituted that on Shabbos, everybody should take his lulav in his own home rather than the base of English. Don't even bring your lulav to the base of English. Pick up your lulav, make the bracha at home, shake, and that's it. Number one, Daddy. The Hasidim have a minhag. I forgot when. That they throw, Jerry, you might know about this minhag. When they throw apples, the Rebbe threw apples into the crowd with the stadium in Elizabeth. Yeah, apples. It was, I forgot where, maybe it's by Tu B'Shvat or whatever it is. The Rebbe's, Hasidic Rebbe. I was there in Klosenberg, but I know it happened in Sams and in other places.
Where was this?
In Klosenberg, in Borough Park.
No. Oh, it was in Borough Park.
In Borough Park, or in Sams in Netanya, or in other places where the Rebbe started throwing, and the Hasidim in the last 10 years started scrambling one over another to grab the apples. And they quote, it was banged on the table, and they said, stop. He said, if anybody moves, one person moves from their place, when I throw the apples, right? They said no. They said the minhag will stop. That's it. I'll give out the apples by hand. I'll stop throwing the apples because of this Gemara right here. Okay, that's the fact. The answer to your question is that when it says lulav, it means lulav.
Yeah, I know that, but that's a big problem. A lulav, you could say, okay, you take it, but let's say I bought a $1,000 esrog. I want my esrog. I don't want your $5 esrog.
The answer is
$5.
The answer is either buy a $5 esrog or is that Keli Vambay, like we said before, to show you chashibus of your esrog. You spent the money on a fancy esrog, knowing you may never use it.
It's not a good answer. He said they put a settle.
On the air.
My name is.
And I'm not giving you as a matana.
So tell me, yes, Sukka, can my wife shake the lulav?
Yes, of course. It's a mitzvah. It's not a chiyuv. On Shabbos, we don't shake the lulav and esrog. We don't do it anymore. It's not issue. She's not chayv, just like they're not chayv to sit in the sukkah.
Well, I would like her to do it.
Right, of course. I told him I mean.
Meaning, she has mom grummer. that women already accepted upon themselves.
They accept, like, I'll give you an
So there's a
example,
case
chauffeur. Let me ask you
Okay.
something. Your wife goes to listen to chauffeur, or you bring a chauffeur, you try to blow the first
I
30.
used to shul on
Okay, chauffeur.
for chauffeur.
Okay, they don't have chiyuv for chauffeur. It's a mitzvah. That's
They
a
do,
mitzvah,
but
grandma.
they accept
But
it.
they don't have a chiyuv. They have a mitzvah. A kiyum mitzvah. There's two things. A chiyuv mitzvah. There's a chiyuv. You have to keep the mitzvah. And then there's a kiyum mitzvah.
I never heard that expression.
Okay, so the example, the perfect example is the Vilna Gaon's example. There's a chiyuv to eat matzah the first night of Pesach.
Okay.
The erev toichlu matzahs. The rest of Pesach, you don't have to eat matzah.
And I
But if you eat matzah, you mekayim a mitzvah. You get a mitzvah. You make because you're not allowed to eat chametz. You can get the mitzvah of eating matzah. Okay, they don't have to hear the shofar. Kiyum.
Kiyum, I never heard mentioned that.
Kiyum, right? The lashon of the svarim always is kiyum a mitzvah, kiyum a mitzvah. They're similar to what many times I've mentioned.
Gets credit in heaven
100%.
for hearing the shofar.
Who's sitting in the sukkah, on sukkah, shaking the lulav and esrog, right? And they go, Daddy, just give me 1 minute. I want to get to the. Yeah, no, I'm just finishing them right over here. Okay, so this case, Amai, why is it what he called? Tiltul ba'amahu the less of a Shabbos. The relevant prohibition is only on handling the lulav, which is only a muksa problem. Let it override the Shabbos restrictions. Why is it only on the first day of Sukkot? Can I shake the lulav in the base of English? I should be able to shake it the entire Shabbos, the entire week, whenever it falls out, because taking the lulav is only muksa, and we're dealing with the diaraisa. So what's the question? Amarabba, and this is with Gezerishim and Yilku B'Yoda B'Yelech Eitzel Baki L'Lamid. Came Rab and said, I might come and take the lulav on Shabbos and carry it in my hand to ask a expert, how do I shake the lulav? And now we're on today's stop, which is all I wanted to get to. The Yavrinu Arba Amis B'Shus Sarabim, and he might come to carry it for Amis B'Shus Sarabim. That's it. That's where we're stopping. We're gonna repeat that tomorrow, but I just want to say, Bob, because we kept mentioning it today. It's actually on today's stop, which of course we will tackle.